Doctors at Wolfson Children's Hospitals reported a 222% 1 year increase in injuries related to so called micromobility devices, including e bikes and e scooters. And based on what they're seeing this year, that number is expected to double again. Here to discuss the growing hazard of e wheels and efforts to rein it in, I am joined by Adam Brown, Deputy Chief of the University of North Florida Police Department. Good morning, Good morning, Adam Brown.
Good morning.
I'm going to call you doctor, but I know that you're just a deputy chief for today.
Adam's good.
All right, Adam. Talia Fuste.
Yep,
I'm doing it all right. All right. Transportation planner with the North Florida Transportation Planning Organization. Talia, thanks for being here.
Yep, excited to be here.
All right. We're also joined by Rebecca Melvin, Trauma, Injury Prevention, and Outreach Coordinator at UF Health Jacksonville. Good morning.
Good morning.
So, Rebecca, I'm going to start with you because you spoke at a press event last week on this new initiative. Goal is reducing the number of accidents involving micromobility devices. You have been in the world of trauma response for a while now, though. Describe what it is that you're seeing. Tell us a little bit about how people in the world of trauma care and response began realizing that something had changed.
So we've always had people come in with bike-related accidents. This is Florida. The weather's beautiful almost the entire year, so people are out and about doing their things. Once COVID hit, a lot of people bought more bikes. Bike sales, actually, I read somewhere, they rivaled Christmas time sales during that time because people could at least be outside in a safe environment. And it was encouraged. At about this time also, we started seeing e-bike prices starting to drop a bit. So e-bikes have been around for a long time. Over in Europe, they've used e-bikes for a while. They have much more of a history of it than we do because their infrastructure is kind of made a bit more for it. We are not as bike friendly, especially here in Jacksonville, as other areas of the country. So when we see accidents, it's because there is an interaction between someone on micromobility, so e-bike, e-scooter, bicycle, scooter, skateboard, whatever it might be, in a car, because our roads are not necessarily as friendly as they need to be.
Yeah.
So a few years ago, the price on these devices definitely took a bit more of a dip. More people started using them, which is good. We have more people out in the community, out and about. But I don't think anybody actually looked into what they were getting into. So some of the stuff that we're seeing is very young riders on a device that could go, 15, 20, 25, 28 miles an hour with almost a click of a button with zero knowledge of how the road actually works. So that's terrifying.
Yeah. And the result is that you're seeing injuries of a different nature. Describe to us what, kind of typical bicycle injuries you were accustomed to seeing and how these are of a different order of magnitude.
So on a regular person riding a bike, not, the bicyclists that are used to long distance rides down A1A and stuff, we usually see isolated orthopedic injuries where someone fell, broke a wrist, broke an ankle, maybe head injuries if they hit their head on something. If it's a bike versus a car, those are terrible. In general, we are very squishy. Cars are not. We don't win. You're not going to win that race. When you add a motor to that, your energy is going a whole lot faster. So somebody who hits a stationary object going 10 to 15 miles an hour on a regular bike, which is still fast, versus someone who's hitting it at 28 plus miles an hour, those are very significant injuries. So the things that we're seeing that are different, we've always seen head injuries, but we're seeing actual skull fractures and facial fractures, which we wouldn't typically see on a regular bike. The orthopedic injuries we're seeing, it's now isolated to a wrist. I feel like when I was a kid, that was a badge of honor. I fell off my bike, I broke my wrist. Right. Skateboarding, I broke my wrist. That's what you did. We're seeing multiple bone fractures. We've seen pelvic fractures, of intra-abdominal injuries, chest injuries, punctured lungs due to these kind of accidents. All of this leads to increased hospitalization. So someone who on a regular traditional bike or regular, man-powered scooter that cannot get to these great speeds very quickly, these people are staying in the hospital, then potentially going to rehab. You're looking at weeks, months, potentially years of recovery for accidents that we just hadn't really seen before. And this is not just a Jacksonville thing. I have colleagues all over the nation in injury prevention, and this is a national injury issue. It's not something that we see in all areas of the city either. There's pockets of areas that actually have more of an incidence of e-bike use and e-scooter use in other areas. This is a big issue. We've seen a lot of publicity in St. Johns County with children on these bikes. Um, it's an everybody issue. Like, if you're on the road riding, if you're walking on a sidewalk, like, you're going to encounter individuals riding some form of micromobility. Um, it's how individuals act when they encounter something like, there's suddenly a pedestrian on the sidewalk and you're going 28 miles an hour and you're not knowledgeable enough to know how to actually navigate that person. So we're also seeing pedestrian injuries due to micromobility, where the person riding the device doesn't get hurt, but the pedestrian kind of jumps out of the way, which I think UNF has had some issues with as well. So it's not just the person riding the device, it's also the other people on the road and on the sidewalk that are being impacted by
Yeah,
them.
and so, I mean, Deputy Chief Adam Brown, what are you seeing at UNF? What kind of concerns or complaints are you hearing? And why did UNF want to be kind of the launching pad for this local initiative to raise awareness about device safety?
Well, at UNF, we've always had a lot of bicycles, skateboards, wheels, things like that that the students are riding. Because just the core campus, it lends itself to, you got to get from one side to the other, so you don't want to just always walk. You want to save time. And like I said, we've always seen the scooters and the bicycles, but now we're seeing the e versions of those, and we're seeing a pretty good increase in them. Um, every day around campus, I see both. I see the e-bikes and I see the e-scooters. Some students are even riding them onto campus from off campus, so they're coming down sidewalks and roadways, and it's a big concern of ours, because on campus you have a lot of pedestrian traffic, and we got to share the road, we got to share the sidewalks, and share the common areas of campus between those mobility devices and the pedestrians. Especially in core campus, when you're close up to the buildings, a lot of the sidewalks, you've got a heavy pedestrian concentration, and then you've got a skateboard or even a motorized skateboard or an e-bike or an e-scooter coming through there. There's there's a chance that you're going to have an injury. You're going to have something that you don't want to have. So we're just always trying to keep our campus safe. UPD is very dedicated to keeping a safe campus, and we like to get out in front of things. We like to be proactive, not reactive, and that's what we're doing today.
And you've always been kind of fighting this when it comes to the covered walkways. There's signs there, no bikes and no skateboards, and so that's not a new thing. But it's the motor that makes these more of a concern, more of a hazard.
Correct. And as you said, we've been doing this for a while. We have an initiative. It's called Stroll It, Don't Roll It, and which means when you're going across the crosswalks, push your device across. Don't ride it full speed across. Just yesterday on campus, I had an e-scooter come right out in front of me.
Mm.
And luckily I'm paying attention when I go through there, but not everyone is paying attention. I keep my head on a swivel for that reason. I want to make sure that I keep the people safe as I'm driving through. But yes, we've always had that problem. We receive complaints from people about the skateboards and the scooters and things coming through there in the heavy pedestrian areas. And the difference is with the e versions, they're coming through a lot faster.
Yeah.
And just people, there's no malicious intent, but I think people aren't fully aware of the danger that these things can pose.
Talia, let's talk a little bit about the different kinds of e-bikes that are out there in particular, because there's different classes of them and they have different properties. So tell us just briefly, if you will, what most of the bikes are, how they differ, and what speeds they go.
Yeah, for sure. So we're looking at three different classes of e-bikes at the moment, and we're going to look at class one. That's going to be an e-bike that goes up to 20 miles per hour, but it is only going to be pedal assist. So there's going to be no throttle in there. There's no button getting you up. You have to pedal it if you want to get above 10 miles per hour per se, like your normal bike. And then there's going to jump up to class two. That's going to have a throttle on there that will assist you to get to that 20 miles per hour and can unfortunately go 20 miles per hour if you're not pedaling it. And then there's going to be the class three bike that I think we see the most problems with. that goes up to 28 miles per hour, and it has a throttle on there that you can go up to 28 without pedaling. So it can become a bit problematic if we're having children per se on these bikes that are going 28 miles per hour when a normal bicycle might go 10 to 12 miles per hour. So it can get a bit tricky there.
At the press conference last week on this topic, the spokesperson from AAA a couple of times talked about people going speeds of 20, 30, 40, sometimes 60 miles an hour. So you're talking about bikes that max out at 28. What is going on with these other much faster bikes?
Unfortunately, there are some off-market bicycles that can be rigged up to go faster, or even some of these e-scooters really are going at plus 30 miles per hour, which if you really think about that, that's basically electric motorcycle per se is what they're talking about this now. But I don't think anybody who's pedaling on something should be going more than 28 miles per hour at this moment, so it can become very dangerous very quickly.
So those may or may not be street legal, but they certainly are out there. We're seeing people ride them, and they're, don't necessarily have things on them that we would consider, whether it's bells to let people know that they're coming through. Some of this is preventable stuff when it comes to accidents. How much of this has to do with just age of, the cyclist experience? How many of these concerns surround young people, and how many are more just, everyday garden variety accidents?
Yeah, I think a lot of these accidents just really have to do with the speed that we're going at, and the fact that people are pulling out in front of cars very at erratic speeds. But I think that everyone gets on this bike, and it's really exciting when you can go faster. And why would I not go up to that speed? However, there's a lot of responsibility when you're going faster to how fast can I brake? Where should I be riding this bicycle? Should I be riding in the road with cars? Should I go super fast so I can keep up with those cars? So I think when you add the element of maybe your youth in there, why would I not go that fast? It's exciting.
Yeah. And so one of the things that I haven't seen a lot of conversation about, but I'm curious, Rebecca, is people wearing headphones. It seems like that's something that is almost a universal, whether it's pedestrians or people riding some kind of device. How does that impair their ability to navigate roadways or to anticipate hazards?
So I think the old thing is, someone can't chew gum and walk on a sidewalk, right? Our brains are really not made for doing multiple things at the same time. So if I have my phone out and I'm attempting to walk, all of my concentration is actually looking at my phone. My brain will actually cut down my peripheral vision because my brain is saying, this is most important. We're going to override everything else. Think of the last time you're going somewhere and you're trying to find an address. Most people turn down the radio. Like you're not, that's not doing anything. I'm looking for something, but why do I turn it down? Because I need to concentrate all of my mental processes into seeing something. So when you add speed, you add somebody who, regardless of age, if I have the ability to go fast, I'm going to go fast. And now I'm going to put music on. You're not going to hear cars. You're not going to hear other pedestrians on the road. Even if there's a rescue unit or a police vehicle coming by, generally speaking, it's within like 300 feet that you actually start hearing those sirens. It's a really short amount of space. It's not much, it's not great. And most people, when they're doing these kind of things, if someone comes up behind them, what are they going to do? You're going to startle, you're going to jerk your hands, and that's where people start laying down these bikes or these scooters or the one wheels. Some of those one wheels go up to like 50 and 60 miles an hour. A one wheel.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I mean, so we've been talking largely about bikes, but the scooters are a big thing as well. And I want to just ask about the fact of the rental availability of these. Downtown Jacksonville has them, but a lot of cities now do. And bikes, e-bikes that you can go and but how does that impact safety when somebody is, using an app to check out a device that perhaps they've never ridden before or are in a city or a space that they've never been to before?
I think it adds an element of danger there because maybe you're not familiar with the device. I was telling a story before. I was in San Diego and I rented one of those scooters, and I'm not as young as I used to be, but I was pretty clumsy on that thing and embarrassed my kids because I was trying to figure that thing out. And then my wife and I were just in Vancouver before, and they had tons of places where you could rent bicycles. And we saw some interesting stuff there. People that look like they barely knew how to ride a bicycle, and they're on one that goes close to 30 miles an hour.
Yeah, and they're in a place that is unfamiliar to them. They may have different rules of the road. Um, so, in terms of the regulations that are currently in place, they are basically, Talia, they're, you know, resemble in most places what rules bicycles have currently, but that might be changing.
Yeah, I think right now the state is kind of giving the power back to the local municipalities when it comes to setting laws for what the ages are for these vehicles and for these e-bikes or e-scooters or where you might ride them. And at the moment, we're seeing that a lot of municipalities are looking at limiting the speeds on your sidewalks or limiting what can be on the sidewalk. So let's say right now in Jacksonville, a scooter can't be on the sidewalk if it's going 15 miles per hour, which are what a lot of these scooters do go. But they would like them in the road if you want to go 15 miles per hour. But if we're looking at an e-bike, we can only be on the sidewalk right now if it's going to be going 10 miles per hour in a lot of areas, and they don't want them in high crowded areas. Because I think at the end of the day, a lot of these vehicles, we need them to be in the safest place possible for everyone. We want these e-bikes and these e-scooters to be able to ride in a safe capacity and for their purpose, to get further places, further distances in the shorter periods of time that they want to do it in. So I think that protective facilities, maybe that are off-road, are the best options for these. But if you are going to be on the sidewalk with any of these, you need to be yielding to pedestrians.
If you're just joining us, we are talking about a new initiative to improve bike safety and e-device safety around the First Coast. And if you'd like to join the conversation, you can give us a call. 904-549-2937 is the number to join us on air, or you can email us at firstcoastconnect@wjct.org. You can also reach out on social media, on X at FCC On Air, or Facebook or Instagram. So specifically, Florida has been a hard place sometimes lately to create rules that are specific to a municipality. Home rule, it's often this battle about, what local governments can implement versus what the state is going to allow. But there is a change on that front. July 1, a new law took effect that allows individual municipalities to pass some stricter rules, including who can ride these, what ages can ride these, how fast they can go, and add rules, Rebecca, that might be on top of just the general bicycle guidelines that are in place. What would you advise if you could sort of be the creator of this new legislation? I mean, from a trauma expert standpoint, what do you think would make a difference?
So I'm a mom. I have two kids, and they, do everything they can to see the world through their eyes and be adventurous and learn, which means they take risk. So in my house, in my family, we will not be getting my children e-bikes or e-scooters. We just won't, because they don't have the maturity. They don't have the recognition of like the way traffic flows. They don't understand, as much as I tell my 8-year-old why we stop at a stop sign, she sees it as, well, it's a stop sign. We stop and then we go, not understanding that, no, there's other dangers beyond that. There's reasons why we stop. We have to look for traffic and whatnot. As a parent, I'm not comfortable with someone who's not licensed riding something without protection. A helmet is some protection, but in honesty, the rest of your body is not protected with the ability to go up to 28 miles per hour. There are other states that have limited what age. They have restrictions, licensing restrictions on the class of e-bike and whether or not someone could buy it. I think that if you're in an area where there's rentals, there are other cities that the rental scooters are not legally allowed to be rented to anybody under the age of 16.
So you think that's the appropriate cutoff?
I mean, I think 16 in the state of Florida, you at least have to be 16 to be able to operate a vehicle on your own. So you at least had to have taken a test at that point. So as a parent, I live out at the beaches. I see young children, on these things. There's just a lot of risk for someone who is socially immature to be on something that goes so quickly. But this isn't just a kid's problem. I mean, adults also ride these, dangerously as well. I think societally, we just have not done done the research, as people say,
Yeah.
before purchasing what you need to purchase, to know if it's street legal, because you might buy something that's not. I went to UNF and I saw e-bikes without pedals. Those are not legal in the state of Florida. They're not. They have to have pedals. So before you're making those decisions for you or your family, if your kid can't walk in a straight line on a sidewalk, they probably shouldn't have something that allows them to ride 20 miles an hour.
We've got a call from John on the South Side. Good morning, John. Go ahead.
Hi, good morning. Thank you for the topic, and I certainly support increased regulations on e-bikes for safety. I've got a friend who's going into surgery today for a broken shoulder from an accident from one. But I'm wondering, you had mentioned with regard to the regulations and the capacity of local municipalities to initiate their own regulations. I wonder if that's the case considering the last legislative session, because in the instance like with the food trucks in service stations, it was proposed and passed by Carlucci. He found that they can't enforce that because it's stricter than the state regulation. So I wonder if down the line that's going to become an issue, even as municipalities are possibly passing more strict regulations, if they're going to find out that they're going to get challenged, and then they're not going to be able to do it because of this state takeover of home regulation, of home rule. And thank you.
John, thank you for your comment. I mean, it's my understanding, Adam, that this bill that the governor signed and took effect July 1 basically allows local governments to establish a minimum age for operating these vehicles, to require them to carry some sort of ID when they're riding them, and to offer training on the safe operation of e-bikes. But I don't know I don't know how much farther it goes in terms of requiring, gear, for instance, helmets, limits on speeds on sidewalks. Those things have been implemented by some local governments. Atlantic Beach has a 10 mile per hour speed limit. Neptune Beach has a 15 mile per hour speed limit. So there have been some local efforts in the local beaches communities to implement some of those regulations. But I guess to John's question, do you think that those laws can withstand, additional scrutiny if they're challenged?
I really have no way of knowing that. I believe they could, and for UNF's campus, we will fall in line with what Duval County and the state of Florida enacts. That's usually the way that we go. The way Duval goes, we'll enact the same thing on our campus.
Mm-hmm. Gotcha. We've got a call from Eric on the South Side. Good morning, Eric. Go ahead.
Good morning, Ann. Important topic. Recently was out of UNF, and I had to avoid the foot-powered skateboarders doing 10, 15 miles an hour flying around corners, and I thought, oh, my, I don't want to be one of the 40,000 people who die from fall injuries every year in America. And if UNF is proactive regarding this issue, I sure didn't see it when I was out there. It makes me think I need to wear my bicycle helmet when I'm walking around out there. And secondly, automobile drivers need to be very cautious about pulling out over sidewalks without looking. A sidewalk is a pathway for all kinds of vehicles, especially today with all the motorized vehicles. And I'm very cautious. I look left and right before I pull out on a sidewalk. I don't need any calls from Morgan & Morgan. Thanks for listening.
Thanks, Eric. I know, Adam, that you've said that you've gotten complaints and that there is a heavy presence of these types of vehicles and devices on campus, but you've been pretty fortunate so far in terms of any actual incidents. Is that right?
Correct. In the past year, I pulled the stats, and in the past year, we've had one incident that resulted in injury from someone who was on a scooter, and it didn't involve anyone else, and it was operator error to the best of my knowledge. But I don't want to take away from the caller's comments. I agree. There's a lot of these devices on campus. We have a lot of people walking. That's why when I say we're being proactive, we are being proactive. We get out there. We're trying to educate. Right now, we're in the phase of, we do deployments every day. When we see violations, we stop the violator, we educate them, we can issue them a warning citation or give a verbal warning. We do that frequently, and we're just trying to get the word out. And while I'm on this topic, I'd also like to say, I want the education to go not only to the people on the devices, but also on the pedestrians out there, because our pedestrians are walking around. A lot of them have the headphones on. They're not paying attention to what's going on around them. And I agree they should be able to walk in safety, but I think it's good to always have some type of awareness of what's happening around you.
Sure.
So not only do I want the people on these devices to pay attention, I'd like to have our drivers on campus, because UNF's campus is a cut through where we have a lot of people that have nothing to do with the campus. They're coming through, but also, the pedestrians. I want everyone to be aware and to really pay attention when they're out there.
Talia, it's interesting because there's some cities, places, and sometimes on college campuses, but just other cities in general, where bikes have long been given some preference. And so they have dedicated lanes, and people are very accustomed to the fact that if you step into a bike lane, you could get hit. And it is up to you to make sure that you're looking both ways. It's almost as if, places like that might have a greater awareness. Motorists, pedestrians are already looking out for bicycles because they've been given the right of way in some places. And Jacksonville has not been that place.
Yes, I think that we're all learning how to share the space right now, in Jacksonville specifically. Even when you're on the bicycle on a shared use path, which is a larger sidewalk here, people all think I have the right of way, like you're saying. The pedestrian thinks I don't have to move out of the way for this bicycle. But the case is we need to learn how to share the space until we have the facilities where we can separate from each other. And I think that Jacksonville is doing a great job at right now creating a driver safety course to look at how can bicyclists, how can new drivers learn how to interact with each other at the same time. And I think there's a number of steps we can take to get there, and it's educating our younger communities on where do you walk, how do you cross a crosswalk, where can you ride your bike, like we've been talking about right now. But overall, how can we be outside and be together in a safe way? And I think that everyone has the right to be on a safe street. And I think we'll get there slowly, but we need infrastructure, we need education, and we just need to be aware of everyone that's on the roadway at the same time.
Yeah, I do, before we end it, Rebecca, talk about helmets, because we know, first of all, that helmet use overall is declining. Regular bikes, e-devices, whatever. But one thing that you brought up the other day, which I think is important for people to understand, is that regular bicycle helmets don't cut it necessarily when we're talking about the speeds that you can travel on an e-bike. And they also don't last forever. Can you just talk a little bit about, a regular bike helmet, whether you need to be shopping for something else, and what do you need to look for when you have one that you've owned for a while?
Absolutely. So you're correct. So bike helmets are made of foam and plastic, so they degrade over time. They also are rated for an impact, not multiple impacts, but an impact. So once someone does fall, they hit their head, that helmet is kind of null and void. We don't really have a way of kind of looking into it to making sure that the integrity of the foam is still there. So you're really taking a risk using it again and again if you have had a fall. A regular traditional bike helmet, the ones that you buy at bike stores and Walmart, they're all certified helmets. They all pass the same certification, so to speak. And they're all rated up to 20 miles an hour. That's for impact. So if you're on a device that goes greater than 20 miles an hour, while it will protect your skull somewhat, it is not going to offer the same amount of protection for someone that would be on a traditional bike or a traditional scooter. So what is recommended is an NTA 8776 helmet. That's a Dutch rating. It's not an American rating. Over in Europe, again, they've had a history with e-bikes for much longer than we have. So internationally, it's known as a very highly rated helmet. Those are impact tested up to 28 miles an hour. So in the state of Florida, a class 3 e-bike is not supposed to go greater than 28 miles an hour. So if you're on a device that somebody has modified to go faster than that, or you're on something that goes well over that 28 miles an hour, that is not going to be as effective either at protecting you. Will it stop you from getting a traumatic brain injury? Probably not. It's going to displace some energy. It will protect your actual skull, which is what we want to see, because we're seeing, again, skull fractures, facial fractures. They do fit lower on the head. So really, that's your best bet at protection. High visibility clothing is also very important, because you want other motorists and other pedestrians to be able to see you on the road as well.
Well, it is an important topic. It's one that I know that we'll continue to talk about, but thank you all for what you're doing. Talia Fusta, thank you for being here. She works for the North Florida TPO, which is a First Coast Connect underwriter, but they are like any other guest on this program and didn't have anything to do with our program. Rebecca Melvin, she is a trauma, injury prevention, and outreach coordinator at UF Health Jacksonville. And Adam Brown, Deputy Chief of the Police Department at the University of North Florida. Thank you all so much for being here.
Thank you.
Really appreciate it. All right.